This is my Tango diary. Dear diary, lately I've been thinking about weird stuff. Actually, I was thinking of using Tango as my personal guru. And the more I think about it, the more it actually starts making sense. So, today I wanted to explore the idea of practicing equanimity in your Tango and see how practicing the appreciation of this can actually improve your Tango. So what is this equanimity, right? Well, for me, equanimity is a sort of love. It's the love that you have when you see the broad perspective, so you're no longer attached and clinging to any one thing. So, in other words, if you have the good and you have the bad is not just bad because you've seen more things, you've experienced more things, so you know that very often the bad also comes with some good. For instance, after a tragedy, you might expect some more open-heartedness. And so you are no longer attached to any one definition. You are not perturbed by things as easily. Your Tango, you've probably experienced that. Tango tends to be built as a union of extremes. So experience one extreme and the other at the same time. You have it in the posture, in the attitude, in the dynamics, and pretty much anything that you can come up with. You'll notice that you're kind of stretching it towards the extremes that it might have, whatever it is, and you're developing an appreciation for this. So you're developing an appreciation for the contrast. Just to give you a quick example, you have this very clearly in the posture. So how do you get a Tango posture? Well, you stretch into the extremes. In other words, your upper body has the intention of going up and forwards, while the lower body, hips and down, have the intention of going down towards earth, rounding, and a little bit back. So you have these opposing forces, both of them at the same time in one body. And it's when they both arise that you're starting to create that dynamic type of Tango posture that is very characteristic in Tango. So in general, you're developing an appreciation for the contrast, the spectrum. So equanimity comes with a lot of very useful consequences. One of them, the one that is perhaps best known, is less suffering. So, why? Because if you have the full picture of things, when you're in the more difficult part of whatever it is you're experiencing, then you're not as attached to it as being bad or hard or difficult, because you know this is something that will actually bring something other that is maybe good for you. So in the very moment, your focus is not 100% on the bad, because you can even in that moment start to appreciate the positive consequences that it will bring. So that means less suffering in the moment. Also, a related consequence is a greater ability to accept the present moment as it is. And that comes because when you have these two extremes and you know them, you've experienced them, wherever you are, if you're in the bad part, it's much easier to accept the bad if you know that it's not all bad. Actually, it's going to be pretty good in some ways. So that sort of makes it easier for you to accept whatever is happening in the moment. So with the increased acceptance, you can actually move through adversities with greater ease. Yeah? Because when you accept what is, you are present in the moment, and so you can see what is, and so you can move through it. You can maneuver. If you do not accept it, usually that means that you will be putting up a fight. So instead of using your energy to maneuver through things, you will be using your energy to fight the present moment. Right? So you have less suffering, you have greater ability to accept what is, and you have greater ease in moving through adversity that come as consequences of developing equanimity, a non-clinging type of love. It actually does help you in your Tango, because as soon as you start paying attention to the extremes that you have and playing with them, so you exaggerate one extreme and try to exaggerate the other at the same time, you will be creating something much more interesting in your Tango. So, my suggestion would be to try and sort of make a list of all the extremes that you can find in Tango and see how you can practice both of them at the same time more. Let me give you a few examples. We already saw the example of the posture. One part of the posture is the upper body going up and the lower body going down. This is not the only example for posture. You have many more. You have your knees are going towards each other together while your feet are sort of opening up a little bit. So you have two opposing forces there as well. So you can continue with the posture and examine it and see where other extremes are hiding and exaggerate both of them. And look to the attitude, for instance, and the dynamics. So let's have a look at staying and going. So for the follower to create an interesting dynamic, instead of just following, meaning taking in the information and moving as quickly as the follower can in the direction that is being led, the follower takes in the information, and so the follower knows, for instance, I know we're moving in that direction. So you stay here. I know we're moving in that direction, so my foot is going in that direction, but I stay, I linger, and then I go. That creates a much more interesting dynamic than the one where you just follow along with everything. Because imagine what it would be like. Imagine that you became the perfect follower. So you would follow really quickly and perfectly in every direction. As soon as the leader intended something, you would be going. When you do that, then for the leader, dancing with you will kind of be like not dancing with anyone. There's nothing there because you're so quick. right? So there is no intricate part in the dynamic that is being created. There is kind of very little dynamic in between the two in that sense. So that's another example of staying but going. So you're going but you're staying and then you go, for instance. You have this in the attitude. For instance, looking at tango from the outside, a lot of people tend to say that tango looks like a very serious dance. So, very often they associate seriousness as something where you're closed. So you're not really open, you're not engaging, you're not communicating, you're closed. And how much fun can that be, right? But they may not see that you also have the extreme opposite of the closed. You have the very open in your chest. You have a totally open connection where you're taking in the other. But you're not doing that with all of your body. You have a dynamic going on. You have one part that is closing, it is restricted, so you're not just freely opening up. So there is a certain restriction, and yet there is a total opening. Restriction and total opening, right? That too makes for a very interesting dynamic. And practicing these two extremes in your tango, in the beginning you may want to exaggerate one, and then exaggerate the other, and then see if you can have one and the other. But then the next step would be to see how you can have both of them without creating a tension that is tearing you apart. Instead, you're finding a peace. You're expanding in both directions with peace in the middle, with appreciation in the middle. The more you practice this dynamic in your tango, the easier it will be for you to translate it into other areas in your life as well. Finding the peace, the acceptance of whatever is going on, because you see the bigger picture. And so you're able to stay open with love in a non-clinging way. I would actually love to hear your ideas about extremes in tango. So if you have some ideas of already existing extremes, please post them in the comments. And that way we can all practice both of them and make our tango even more interesting.